ego slave. Are you one? Are you an ego slave? What on earth is an ego slave, you might be thinking? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down two things. Firstly, what ego actually is, and secondly, I'm going to be enabling you to distinguish if you are a slave to your ego or not. Once you've got this, you'll be able to ascertain whether the actions you're taking are purely to feed your ego or whether they're to fulfill a deeper, greater divine purpose, and thus be able to access a whole new level of power and effectiveness in your lifestyle creation abilities. So stay tuned if you'd love to learn this. I am Dan Warburton, a transformational coach who's known for having enabled thousands of entrepreneurs and business owners to succeed in extraordinary ways. I've also got web spaces full of testimonials backing this up, and I'm often invited to speak to audiences of thousands around the world about what transformation makes possible. I now get to live an extraordinary lifestyle, and I want you to be able to experience the same. Here we are. Ego slave. So let me begin by breaking down what ego is, because once you see this, it will give you a much clearer picture of what ego is and to know whether you're living a reactionary existence or a proactive existence. So let's get into it. So ego. Ego is all the things that you think you are and think you are not. So, in other words, we're born from nothing, and then after we're born, things happen. Whether we get shouted at by our parents, whether a school teacher loses their temper with us, whether we don't get included in a game at school, whether we get laughed at, or maybe somebody that we fancied at school just blows us out and doesn't return their feelings. And all these things that go on through life. And then we've got work, relationships, and all these things. And as all these things happen, what happens is we go inventing what we think we are and think we're not. Now, if you go right to the beginning of this, after we're born, we don't know that we even exist. And at some point, we notice our mother is over there and that I am over here. Therefore, if I am now here and I'm not over there, then all of a sudden I experience myself as separate. And then I am over here. Then the I is born. The ego is I. It's everything to do with what I think I am and I think I'm not, that I think that I exist, that I'm over here and all these things. So this is the ego. And the problem is that most people go through life thinking they are the ego. And what happens is people chase results. They chase trying to get a certain outcome or a certain circumstance, or they chase being loved from someone, or they chase getting money to buy that car. And they're forever in this place of dissatisfaction because the ego is demanding them to get what it is that they think that they want. So now, let's get into the second part. Are you an ego slave? In other words, do you find yourself constantly striving to get somewhere or to get something? And that whenever you get there, wherever there is, you never find yourself being completely fulfilled or satisfied. If that's the case, then you are an ego slave. You are a slave to your ego, and your ego is running circles around you. Now, what happens is most people, when circumstances don't go to plan or something doesn't go well, they get angry, they get annoyed, they get fed up. Why? Because they're experiencing themselves to not get what they want in life. In other words, fundamentally, they have a fear of losing something or a fear of never getting something. And either of those experiences very much trigger the ego, because the ego wants to feel validated, it wants to exist, it wants to feel important, it wants to feel like it's here. Now, none of these things are bad necessarily. However, if we start spending our lives constantly feeling that we have to give our ego what it wants and what it desires, then that leaves us exhausted, tired, and fed up. Because no amount of results is going to satisfy the ego. In fact, the opposite starts to happen. When we start becoming wealthy, when we start having a big house or a big car, and there we are looking across our big house and our big car, we start to think that we are that car or we are that house. How is that possible? Well, watch what happens when somebody steals your car. Oh my God, oh no, my car's gone. Or like when people lose their wallet, you know, many people, when they lose their wallet, they get completely overwhelmed. Like, oh God, what am I going to do? It's like, are you your wallet? No. And if you find yourself being one of those people that actually really worries when things like that happen, then you are a slave to your ego. And you're spending your life actually in a realm of reaction. In other words, as your life happens to you, what you're doing is you're reacting to it or trying to force outcomes or trying to control things to be in a certain way. And what will happen is you'll be slightly on edge and constantly like uneasy that things might not go to plan or that what you have won't last forever. And so you're subconsciously trying to hold on to it. All these things leave you as an ego slave, as somebody who's a slave to your ego. And that leads to nothing but dissatisfaction, because at some point, change is going to happen. The only two things you can rely on in life are, number one, death, and number two, change. They're the only two things you can rely on. And they are both ego's worst nightmare, because both fundamentally mean the transformation of ego, the disappearing of ego, and the arising of something new. That's what change and death mean. Only that death maybe is faster than change. But if we avoid change, if we resist change, then we get nothing but dissatisfaction. So how do we free ourselves from ego? How do we free ourselves from this entrapment of always feeling that we have to feed the ego? There is one practice above all that will give you access to freeing yourself from being an ego slave. It is to meditate. Now, why is that? And what is meditating, you might be thinking? To meditate is to sit in stillness and through breathing to come back to a calm, balanced center. And in doing that, what happens is you begin to practice being in your center rather than being in a place of having to chase or grab or get and do. And the more you practice that, the more you practice just sitting, just breathing, and just watching your thoughts. See your thoughts such as, oh, I need to put that money in the bank. Oh, I wonder if I'm going to finish this on time. Oh, I wonder if I'm going to get that done. All those thoughts, what happens is most people go then behave because of those thoughts. And then what happens is people flip from one thing to another. It's like maybe you've had this experience of doing something, you get a pop-up come in your computer, you go click on that, you end up on social media, and then you click on something else, click on something else, click on something else. What's happening there is you're just getting dragged into a loop of reaction. You're getting like shiny object syndrome. But once you meditate and you keep meditating, like even just starting off 5 minutes a day for 21 days is really powerful. If you can get to 20 minutes for 21 days in a row, your life starts to really change and things become extraordinary. Because what happens is you practice watching all your desires, watching all of your thoughts. And instead of acting upon them, you sit in that stillness. And then what happens is circumstances no longer own you. Results no longer own you, and all of a sudden all the things that before had to be in a certain way for you to feel in a certain way don't need to be that way, and you start to really set yourself free. Then life becomes really fun, because then you can just be out here playing and doing what you do and being your own self-expression of you in whatever work it is that you choose. And if it fails, and it doesn't matter if things fail. Why? Because it's just a result. Same as a good result is the same as a bad result. Neither really make any difference. Both are just feedback. And that is freedom from the ego. Until we have that level of freedom, we are only slaves to our ego. And our lives are then only ever about feeding the ego and doing things that has the ego get what it thinks it wants and thinks it doesn't want. And of course, the ego is based on a whole series of interpretations of what we think we are and think we're not from the moment that we were born. So well done for taking the time to check in this video. If you learned something, press that like button. Please, let's boost this video. I would love other people to experience these kind of breakthroughs, these kind of insights, because if people get this, the world will be a better place. So click that like button. Alternatively, if you're truly committed to succeed then subscribe to my YouTube channel, because in getting these insights, which I'm going to be going through more and more throughout the days, you're going to be deepening your ability and lifestyle creation and ever creating a better and better life. And remember, whatever you do, dream the dream. Choose the dream, live the dream. Cheers.